In this segment, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to speak of the final theological category, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the actual assignments that will be connected with these five theological categories. The fifth theological category is the one that my students have, in previous experience, always had the most difficulty with. The title of this category is Revelation. And by revelation, I mean the process by which God reveals God's will to the human community. And I want to emphasize here the word process. And I want to contrast it with the word content. For this theological category, I am not interested in the content of the revelation. There's a lot of interesting things that God says when God reveals God's will to people. That goes without saying. But that would really muddy up the waters here. What I want you to talk about is the process of revelation. Now, let me give you an example of that. If we were going to be examining the Ten Commandments, there's a lot of very interesting and very important and very good content. It says, for instance, the first commandment, you shall have no other gods before me. Now that would be a wonderful thing to discuss under the theological category of God. What does it mean to have no gods before God? Well, that's a content. What I'm going to be interested in, if you discuss the Ten Commandments in relationship to this theological category, is the process by which God communicated the Ten Commandments. How did God communicate the Ten Commandments? He spoke in an audible voice coming out of a burning bush that kept burning and was not consumed. That's what I mean by the process. And as with the other theological categories, revelation appears within the Christian tradition in a lot of different ways. God doesn't only talk to people through a burning bush by an audible voice. We see God communicating through dreams, through visions, through ecstatic trances, through human artistry, somebody just sitting down and intending to write a poem or a song. We see it through historical events. God speaks through what happens. There are just so many different ways, and I want you in this particular theological category to particularly focus on the process by which revelation occurs. And we're going to see that it occurs in a lot of different ways. Now, regarding the reading assignments, when the theology department got together to plan this course, we decided to heavily emphasize within the course the primary documents of the Christian church. Now, what do I mean by primary documents? Historically, scholars have divided the literature that they read to do their research into primary and secondary documents. Primary documents are those things that were written roughly at the time in which the events took place. So, the Bible, for instance, is a primary document. The early writings of the church fathers, as they're called, they are primary documents. The documents of Vatican II in 1963, those are primary documents. But the textbook that we have you buy, the Christian Theological Tradition, which our department wrote and published, that's a secondary document. That's something that's written about the primary documents and the events that they represent. Now, in terms of the secondary documents, you will be responsible for reading the Christian Theological Tradition and the other assignments, and I will quiz you every single time we meet on the secondary documents. I've decided on a different kind of assignment for the primary documents. You are going to have some hefty reading in this class among the primary documents, and these are things that are written thousands of years ago in some cases, hundreds of years ago in many of the others. These are difficult and dense documents. They tend to glaze the eyes and disengage the mind. I know how that goes. So in order to help you focus on these documents, for every primary reading assignment that I give you, you will be responsible to link some aspect of your reading to one of the theological categories. You will have to locate a discussion of one of the theological categories somewhere in your reading. So, for instance, if you're reading Genesis 1, you might want to do God. You might want to do creation. You might even want to do Christ, because the theological tradition actually sees Christ in some of the discussions there. But anyway, you're going to pick one, and then you're going to send to my email box, that's d9penchansky@stthomas.edu. You're going to send to my box a 200 to 300 word reflection on a theological category and the assigned primary reading. You can do one theological category, you could do two theological categories. I don't think you should get much beyond two. And you don't have to discuss the entire primary reading. You could just discuss some short part of the primary reading. And you're going to send that to my box. I will save them. I'll read them all at the end, and you'll get a grade on them. Length counts. If I see one or two sentences just kind of knocked off as this assignment, you will not get full credit for this assignment. So length counts. I want to know that when you were reading these primary documents, your brain was engaged. You were thinking about them. And these must be in my email box by the time we meet on Saturday morning.